Live from the UK, broadcasting around the world. You're listening to the Mic Drop Club, hosted by Douglas Hammond-Dishe. Message received. You do not need to know what you need. Just engage with the podcast feed. Providing weekly insights into cool stuff we've read, saw, did, or heard about what made us say, wow, eureka, damn, nothing is off limits. If it motivates and inspires you to reach your goals, then it shall be discussed. Featuring guest interviews from high performers and people of influence, and weekly awards for the best mic drop moment. This podcast is guaranteed to leave you pumped up for the week ahead. Don't just live life. Make life boom.
Hi everybody, it's Douglas Hammond-Dishe for another episode of the Mic Drop Club today. I'm super happy. I've got Rhys Thomas in the house, coming down to spend some time with us to share his knowledge, share his experiences when it comes to mental health. For those who don't know, Rhys Thomas is not only an inspirational speaker, he's a one-to-one mentor, a competition-ready ex-rugby athlete. So this is a guy that not only has taken his professional career to the zenith, he's somebody that has endured his own personal struggles when it comes to physical and mental health. So with no further ado, Rhys Thomas, how you doing?
I'm so well. Thank you, Douglas, for the introduction, brother. So I'm glad to be here today. I mean, it's been a long time coming. Got to meet you a few months back at an event and seen you a few times since, but it's good to finally get in the room with you, boy.
Indeed so. Long time coming. As soon as you spoke, for those who don't know, Rhys does a lot of motivational guest speaking events, and we did meet up at one of these events. I'm sponsored by Inspired, so we must big up Inspired here at this point. And as soon as he opened his mouth and started to articulate his journey, he liked to shock the audience in terms of he gives it to you raw, undiluted, in a way that really allows you to then connect with him as a human being. Because so many times when we talk about motivation and people's stories, they leave out the real meat, as it were, and you're just left with the vegetables. Rhys is not somebody like that. So I want you to really engage with his message. His message is one of hope, inspiration, and hope, inspiration, and I would say courage more than anything else to endure over and above all life obstacles. Okay. So Rhys, just talk to us about your journey, in terms of how did mental health even come to being something that you thought about coming from professional rugby?
Yeah, thanks, Douglas, for that intro. Yeah, man, it was such an unexpected journey, having gone from the heights of international rugby, being a 10-year professional, without its issues. I had quite a turbulent career, shall we say. Mostly driven from attitude issues and a lot of ego, a lot of pride, false pride. But it was a fantastic ego-driven experience, which led to a lot of lows, but it also led to a hell of a lot of highs. And eventually, it all came crashing down when I had a heart attack in the gym whilst playing for a team in Wales called the Scarlets. I literally was just in the gym, had a huge heart attack, and from that experience, it left me, not very well at all. I was very lucky to survive the heart attack. When I'd come around from the operation, I'd had a quadruple bypass, and just like that, literally overnight, my career was over in a heartbeat, and literally, and that was the beginning of a huge amount of struggle for me, because not only now was my health bad, but that physical battle in the short term, over the next few months, turned out to become a real mental battle for me. which was something I didn't expect. I was riddled with anxiety about my health, about dying, but also having huge panic attacks that came from absolutely nowhere. I didn't even know what anxiety or panic attack was. And all of a sudden, on the back end of this traumatic experience and this operation that I'd had and the recovery, it kind of took me on this mad journey. But like most men, Douglas, I struggled to speak about how I felt. I was fearful, I was scared, I had a lot of guilt and shame from my past, and it was kind of all hit me at once. As well as that, obviously, that transition from the game to post rugby was something I wasn't prepared for. I think not many people are, but that athlete transition was something that I really struggled with, and it led me down a really dark path.
You've hit so many key points. Notes, I say. You talked about shame. You talked about fear. In mental health, they do say that shame is the lowest form of existence that anyone can be in.
Oh, yeah.
And all other emotional states are above the state of shame. So you've reached rock bottom. You're riddled with shame, and there's fear, and this is a journey not out of your own choosing.
Yeah.
Okay. Something must have sparked in you.
Well, I mean, that process was such a challenge, and then it didn't stop there. As I was recovering, I discovered that my health was actually deteriorating pretty rapidly. At the same time, my health was deteriorating. Like I said, my mental health wasn't great. I wasn't expressing like most men. I kind of locked myself down, didn't want help. It was, even though my ex-wife at the time was really, I had a good family basis. I had a lot of support from my help, from my friends, from my family, from my children. But I kind of shut down, and I would just tell people, no, I'm fine. I don't need help. I didn't really feel like I saw a psychologist once or twice just to get some breathing techniques to cope with my anxiety. And for the moment that seemed to work. But then my health was not great. To the point where I needed a heart transplant, and that was going to happen in 2013. But they discovered then that I had pulmonary hypertension, so that basically meant that I was untransplantable. And the only other option they gave me was to have this pump fitted in my heart called a left ventricular assist device, which is basically a pump that they implant into the heart, which sucks the blood out of the heart and pumps it back around my body, and it takes the load off the lungs, so it reduces the pulmonary hypertension, and then allowed me to become transplantable. Now, that operation I had in 2014, because in 2013 I got given roughly about 12 months to live. So when I had that operation, I was not well at all. I spent 2 months pre-op in Birmingham in the Queen Elizabeth in the coronary care unit, which was an absolutely horrendous, terrifying, traumatic experience, surrounded just by very ill human beings waiting on the transplant list, people dying. To experience that amount of death and trauma was just horrendous. And, when I eventually had that operation, again, so lucky to survive. I was in a coma for 2 weeks post-op. But when I did awaken from that operation, my reality was greatly changed. I was literally half man, half machine. This machine is externally run by a set of batteries. They last roughly 8 hours a set. After 8 hours, if I don't change them to a new set of batteries, that machine will stop, my heart would stop, and I could die. So, it was a terrifying reality that I wasn't prepared for. And again, that recovery process, although when it started to heal and the machine gave me a greater quality of life, I still had a bunch of problems that I'd still had from my career ending, from that shame, that guilt that I hadn't addressed, plus now being run by a machine. And the very thought of going into another theatre or a hospital would send me straight into a panic attack, bro. So it was, that 2 year period was terrifying, in every single way. But I was grateful, Douglas, genuinely now. I mean this, bro. When I left that hospital, when I left Birmingham Queen Elizabeth after that recovery, which took about a month post-op, when I woke up, when I went home, dude, I was so grateful. I was like, thank God. Everything I've been through was like, how I'd come out the other side was a miracle, genuinely. And I was so happy. I went home to my family, had my friends, they grouped up, so much support, so much love. But again, hesitant to ask for help, didn't want it. Didn't want to process the feelings that I was having. I just tried to bury them.
Yeah.
And that kind of left me on another journey then.
Yeah, because there's quite a lot of emotions that you're going through, and there's a lot of situations where you have to redefine what you previously thought about fear, about control. You spoke about waking up and being connected, half man, half machine. You've got now these devices that are taking away element of your autonomy, of your control.
Yeah.
And as an athlete, when you got that ball in your hand, rugby ball in your hand,
yeah,
and you're looking to take on your competition, there's element of control. So how big a deal was it for you to having to surrender and reach acceptance that your control is going to be limited to to a degree? How did you process that?
Yeah, well, terribly. I didn't process it. I was just stuck because, like you said, boom, like that. Transition was really fast. It wasn't like a process of months of recovery from an injury. It was just like career over. And, it was that identity was a huge crisis because all of a sudden, Rhys, the rugby player, that environment that I was so used to, and I thought that bubble was never going to pop. I had, another 2 contracts under my belt. I'd agreed a contract literally a couple of months prior to move to France. So my life was like planned out for the next couple of years, and I knew I was coming to the end of my career, but I still had 6 years. But then just like that, gone. So it was a huge identity crisis, and one that I was lost. Just so lost. And then it was like, how can I create this a different identity? And one identity that it was easy to cling to was rugby. Obviously, I went into coaching because I just thought, this is my sport. This is what I'll do. But then the other one was, I was always rugby is an environment which enables heavy drinking. It's a culture. So I kind of got went back to that culture. And although, because I had my health wasn't in a good place and my heart was badly damaged, I had like a fluid restriction. I couldn't drink a lot. 2.5 liters a day was my fluid restriction. So I knew like drinking at first it wasn't a priority, but that in that environment, I felt comfortable. I could have a few pints, be part of a group, that lad-ish type culture, an environment, familiarity, all these types of things. So that was kind of like what my identity morphed to, was like, it was familiar. I knew the rugby environment. I knew that coaching would give me that. It would give me a purpose, a goal. But then also the drinking was familiar. And also like I was always that larger than life type of character, that like lovable rogue that was a bit wild. So again, that was another identity that I kind of morphed into, was like, Rhys the clown, Rhys the pisshead. But obviously that was a transition that took a while because it was all health permitting. Slowly, with that unintegrated emotions and feelings, especially for that shame and guilt and fear, like I didn't feel it as that. And I didn't integrate it, and I didn't speak about it or project it or tell anyone about how I felt, even though my ex-wife could see that pain in me and that suffering and that, that emotional distress. I didn't project it, and I just locked it all in. And then my escape, unfortunately, then went down the wrong road.
Sure. In terms of the culture of rugby at the time, maybe it's slightly changed now. I hope it does. The culture of drinking into excess amounts, that laddish type behavior. For you, do you feel that the personality that you became in that environment was a different personality to who you really are at your core?
Yeah.
Were you drinking as an escape?
Yeah.
To fit in? Or is that who you felt, who you truly are?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Like, for sure. Obviously, at my very core, with the work I've done now, there was an element of, wanting to be accepted. And I did that in many different guises, outrageous behavior, that ego-led, pride-based type of, I can drink this much, you only live once, and everyone was like, how do you do it with this machine? What you've been through and losing your career. And it was like, oh, it's fine, I'm good, when I had that beer in my hand and I had a little bit of that Dutch courage, I was like, no, you only live once. It was such a shit approach, but it was a trauma response where my whole life I'd escaped, whenever things were tough or hard or I had any emotional distress, like alcohol was there because it was a great escape. I would just, go and get drunk and then I'd just forget about it and move on and not actually address the issues. But it was like, I thought I was putting it to bed. But those bad habits then, when I was in that situation, drove me to then start to escape more regularly, more often, and take more and more unnecessary risks, especially with my health. It just became, it was a progression, quite a fast progression, because then with my fluid restriction, I started to drink spirits instead of lager. And then from there, it just kind of went downhill, like rapid.
And you speak about, as you said, going downhill, and things have a snowball effect. And using an iceberg analogy, I think if we take a look at the instant when you have this heart attack, your life now is just completely turned up on its side. How much of the inner resilience that you have was born out of events way before you were a competition ready rugby athlete? How much of that was lessons that you took growing up in South Africa that you were able to draw upon to get you through this situation? Because sometimes we don't really appreciate life lessons until we get hit by a life-changing event, and this certainly was a life-changing event for you. I just want to explore with you, like, how much of who you are that shaped you, the Rhys Thomas that was able to change countries, adapt, how much of that did you draw upon to get yourself through this situation?
Yeah, I mean, it was at the core the thing that got me through most of it, like unbelievably resilient, to go through just the career, even from, like you said, leaving SA at 18, pursuing my dream of being an international rugby player. I mean, I picked the ball up late at 14. I'm a big believer, Douglas, about we're a product of our own environment. And from a young age, I was obsessed with sport. I loved sport. I was super competitive, and like sport, gave me that vent, and that competitive edge, wanting to be the best at whatever I did, but getting knocked down, but getting myself back up, but then also those environments that I went to, especially my high school. My high school was like, I went to a boys' boarding school in Joburg, and a well-known sporting school. And like that environment was, in the boarding school in particular, was a challenge, bro. I loved it. It was like a big sleepover, but at the same time, it was tough because, there was corporal punishment, and if we messed about, it got taken care of. And like I said, I was a mischievous, inquisitive, free spirit, but I was also happy to take the punishment when it came, because it was an easy out for me to take a lash as opposed to having to write out school rules. Sign me up, bro. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but that from a young age, you could see that those cycles were there. But that resilience was built in that environment massively. And then leaving the country at 18 to move abroad to Wales, start a new beginning, get that job, have lots of ups and downs, told I'd never make it, get through that system, get through those junior age grade, international age groups. There was a lot, mate. So it showed itself throughout my career.
Yeah, I can see that, and certainly for somebody that's from the Southern Africa region, there's also this expectation that men are supposed to be tough, resilient, and there's a lot of alcohol dependency in that culture as well.
Oh yeah.
How have you managed to challenge some of these perceptions as you go around coaching?
Yeah.
And how much of that still believe is playing a big part in why men are struggling in this moment to cope, to manage, and to sustain their mental health?
A lot of it is the level of social acceptance of alcohol. We got there's a bit of taboo around drugs, especially coming from South Africa, drugs was bad. Don't do drugs. But I thought, from a young age, I was experimented with drugs like most people, but alcohol was just there. And I think in South Africa, especially, and in the UK, the drinking culture is huge, but it's there. We've grown up with it. It's completely socially acceptable. It's everywhere. We've seen that generational type trauma being passed down from our parents, our grandparents, where they dealt with a lot of their situations through partying, through drinking, through but we almost made it culturally acceptable that if you did something and you were drunk, it's oh, you're okay, he was drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how much bullshit is that? So you can see
Do you struggle to prioritize your tasks to achieve your goals? Surely there's a better way. We don't have to land in space to be great. Frankly, we don't need to. But given the opportunity, wouldn't you like to do something spectacular and make an impact? Tune in to the Mic Drop Club, where the secrets behind achieving extraordinary results are shared weekly with your host, Douglas Hamandashay. We'll be with you every step of the way, giving you all the motivation to not just live life, but to make life boom.
Yeah, but do you find that there's a stark difference between the view of alcohol, mental health in South Africa to the UK? Any stark differences there?
Not really. I mean, it has become it's quite an ego-driven environment, I find, especially in the rugby circles. It's kind of how fucked can you get? Who's the biggest drinker? Drinking games, getting people absolutely battered to the point where, so it was funny, you had the story from the weekend. Oh yeah, after the game we went out, our thing was puking there, and thing did that, and, but it was just the norm. But, a lot of times it was so funny, but it was you were laughing at that person because it was, the things that we're doing were so morally off track from the people that we were at our core, but it was acceptable because it was it's fine. It's we were just venting. It was all in the name of fun.
Absolutely. And I think that you touched upon about identity. You said it several times about this identity and wanting to be accepted.
Yeah.
And in a drinking binge, as it were. And I'm going back to my not too distant background out drinking. A good night was evidenced by who got messed up the most.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you find yourself feeling that position so that you're also subconsciously make sure that you're being accepted, because you're going to make sure that it's a good night for everybody, even if it means you are the one that is going to take it to the extremes, to that next level. Because I guess a bad night is you go out, have a drink, come back home, nothing happened, no stories.
Yeah.
And I remember you did tell me a story about one drinking binge that you did. with the lads and had to go and perform the day after.
Yeah.
Remember that story?
Oh, mate, yeah. I mean, it happened. Like, do you know what I mean? We'd go out, especially when I was younger, I'd go out on a Friday night, shouldn't have been, game on the Saturday, get absolutely legless, and then perform the next day. And, you know, it wasn't a done thing, but at that point, professionalism was in its infancy. We had, it was still that, like, you know, we drink, but as long as we show up on the day, that's happy days.
Yeah.
And it was almost like a badge, I could say afterwards. They were like, how did you perform like that today, you know, on the back end of what you were up to last night? And it was just like, you'd almost laugh at it. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, yeah. And I didn't do it all the time, Douglas. I mean, I really, especially in my professional career, it happened a handful of times. But, you know, it is most definitely, it was trying to prove something, trying to like people please, or like that competition within that environment to be, you know, known for something, even if that meant that, you know, you tried to be the biggest clown or drink the most or do the most outrageous things, you know, get locked up or, you know, do something just mad.
So on that note, to be known for something, I really like that. Right? So what's your views on legacy? Like, what legacy do you want to leave behind?
Yeah, I think for me, you know, I've got it on my vision board because, you know, I want to be remembered as like Rhys, the good guy, the lovable rogue that was, he was, you know, he's a bit wild when he'd had a few drinks and was inappropriate and, you know, mostly, you know, unacceptable type behavior, but he was a good guy. Or did I, you know, once I sorted my shit out, was it more like Rhys is a good guy, but, you know, what's he doing today? You know, is he a leader? Is he a role model? Because I used to think I was a role model. I genuinely did, though, because I believed that I was. But I mean, I was a horrendous role model. You know, it was like, do as I say, not as I do. I'd say one thing and then do another. And it was a shocking example for my children because, you know, growing up, it was just, it's what I did because it's what I thought was the norm, but it completely wasn't. But once through all that I went through, it kind of enabled me to change my perspective and see that like that was not who I was at my core, and that my value system was being penetrated from every angle. Well, I didn't even have a value system, or more integrity, or honesty, or loyalty, any of those things. So when I actually began to align myself with those value systems to live by, you know, my higher values, that's when things started to change massively in my life. And I started to see, you know, not only from my experience, how badly damaged and how much denial I was in about my situation, but also my behaviors. And that allowed me then to completely change the game, the way I looked at life, and saw that it's not just me. This is not a me problem. This is a man problem in society right now. And I think the men in society today are lost. We are so lost. No, we don't have a clear identity. It's quite a grey area. And that's why we see the issues we see in society today, like an almost narcissistic type man.
Yes. And you see that played out across social media. Narcissism, look at me. And what in the world that is grappling with attention, those people that can get the attention, get the voice. You know, there's an old saying that the squeaky joint is the joint that gets the oil. You know, so they got everybody trying to make more noise than each other, but not being coherent. Yeah. The 80s was an interesting time for myself. There's a lot of blockbuster, testosterone-driven male role models from Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Dolph Lundgren, you know. And then there's been a transitional time when men have been encouraged to embrace their emotions, to be supported in crying, asking for help, all of those things. But I still believe somehow we are not enabling men to have the right space. The space where they can, if they want to shout. Yeah. If they want to burn off some energy, because testosterone is one of those chemicals that goes through our body that makes us behave in a unique way.
Yeah.
And suppressing it, I've seen this with young people. They can end up, they're not allowed to express how they're feeling and get this energy out. They can internalize that, and that is typified by self-harm. You know, I see a lot more young men self-harming, cutting, scratching, suicidal ideation, all of these internalized, because there's no outlet, you know, and society is to blame for that in terms of how we prioritize services, youth centers, all of these. I remember growing up with youth centers.
Yeah.
You know, I do a lot of work in the community, and I could say in my community in Gillingham, there are no active community groups for people to go to, both men and women. So gaming is now can be considered a sport. I'm talking about computer gaming, but what are children missing out from being able to actually go out and express themselves, rightfully or wrongfully? It needs to be, then there needs to allow an outpouring of emotion.
Yeah.
So how much work are you doing in terms of the one-to-one coaching that feeds into allowing people to express how they feel? I know you present yourself, you're comfortable in your own space, you know, but there was a time you weren't able to express yourself the way you are now.
Yeah.
What sort of lessons do you teach to enable people to get to resetting or reframing their outlook on life the way you have?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, right? Because I felt in my experience, my change of perspective came from hitting rock bottom. You know, alcoholism until the point where I needed intervention, went to rehab, and then in that process allowed me to change my perspective, to see things differently, because I was buried deep in denial, you know, and the processes in which I saw life, the way I addressed life, the way, you know, I didn't express was the main issue with getting to the place I was, because it was that, you know, we couldn't show weakness. We couldn't show, you know, it was so, there was so much ego and pride that I couldn't allow myself to surrender, to actually ask for help. So, you know, finding help, admitting, acceptance was a huge part for me. Accepting that I had been, you know, morally bankrupt to some degree, that I had been completely my unauthentic self for so many years, but then surrendering to that. Surrender to, you know, what had happened in my past it can't be changed, Douglas. It's gone. You know, all I can do now is start to live a better existence where I can try and make amends to the damage that I've caused in the past. And that sometimes that process is ongoing. You know, even now with my children, even though we have a billion times better relationship, you know, it still takes work, because they still have that. It's like a trust thing, you know, like, you know, this is a new type of dad they've got now, because they can still remember, you know, old dad, like the wild dad. So that's like a confusing process for them. So it's about consistency then, Douglas. So this work it's ongoing. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I try to help people to better understand that, you know, until we address those demons from our past, that shame, that guilt, that remorse, until we can process that and make our amends where we can, you know, however that looks to you, and then from that point on, kind of begin to clean a slate, set fresh foundations, but this time set fresh foundations built on value, built on yeah.
I'm interrupting you because at this point
Okay,
you're
guys,
going to get a
everybody
mic drop.
Atomic mic drop.
Yeah, building foundation based upon values.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And integrity, brother.
and integrity as what the cement.
Yeah. So because this is where it ended for me was the absolute turning point, was forgiveness. You know, I had to forgive myself as well as other people that I'd carried grudges with, which were just absolutely aimless. It was terrible energy that I was carrying with me. It's like, I heard a great quote about forgiveness. It's like giving yourself poison and expecting the other person to die. Like, it's crazy,
Wow.
right? So when I was able to then, because I felt I carried these things with institutions and people, but I just forgave that, and it wasn't an overnight process, but the longest process from that was forgiveness for myself. Because during those times where I was lost, where I was in my darkest hours mentally, when I'd been taken to the depths of my soul, like it was a deep understanding that my conditioning, my programming, my domestication as a man had begun from an infant and was uploaded into my hard drive. So my behaviors were just like, they were being born from those traumas as a young man. And I put trauma in inverted commas. It can be from small things like rejection, not enough attention, these types of things, all the way up to the high end of horrendous trauma. But for me, it was about that forgiveness. And then from that process, then getting a routine in my life, a healthy routine. So new foundation, clean a slate, forgiveness, make amends, and then building. So from there, like, what are my values? But more importantly, before I even asked that question, it was who the hell am I? Because I had to address my identity crisis, because I didn't know who the fuck I was. Literally, I was like Rhys the rugby player, Rhys the pisshead, Rhys the clown, Rhys all these different things, these images, these facades that I had painted, all the masks I had worn, they were bullshit. So I had to strip back those masks, like layer by layer, until I found myself. And that was, I felt so vulnerable. I felt scared, bro. Seriously.
Naked.
So when I felt naked, and when I was naked, bro, my instant reaction was build walls, just like, don't show the real me. Like, I'm gonna just keep mask. But when I got past that initial fear, because when I addressed the identity crisis and realized who I was at my core, who I knew all along was in there, a loving, gentle, caring man. But I painted a different picture, Douglas. I built this because it didn't fit into the society and the circles that I was playing in, because I wanted acceptance, because I feared rejection at my core. That was the reason. So when I got past that, and then after my identity, and I addressed that, and allowed myself the courage to be the real me, which is it's constant ongoing work, right? But after that, allowed me to address fear. Like, how had fear impacted me? And fear had impacted me in many different ways, bro. Like, from a young lad, like fear of rejection, fear of confrontation, to like through my career, fear of failure, fear of judgment, through after my ops, fear of death, the fear of the unknown. Like, all these processes of understanding and self-realization and self-awareness allowed me to start building my identity and understanding, wow, look how fear, and I wrote this out my whole life. I did a life, I wrote it out, and I began to see cycles in my life, and it was all fear-based. And almost all my fears had manifested in terrible choices.
Yeah.
And when I addressed that, and I understood, like, wow, that is where I'm going wrong. And then surrendering, and just saying, like, I need to do some work on me right now. And that's what I did, bro. And I downed tools. I downed this fake image that I had painted to the world, and I started to do the work, bro. I started to do the work.
Excellent.
Okay, guys,
You get
everybody
another
ready?
mic drop for that.
Mic
You dropped some real bombs there, real bombs that will shake everybody to the core. Really, for those of you listening far and wide, rewind that last 5 minutes of Rhys. That conscious stream of thought born out of lived experience is so important. You can read books on motivation, you can read books on how to inspire yourself, etc. But lived experience trumps all of that, and you're hearing it straight from Rhys's mouth. I just want to go back to this whole point of acceptance.
Yeah.
They say that the revolution will never be televised in terms of when things change state, right?
Yeah.
What was it? A quiet internal revolution? What did that? Was it like, aha, I get it? Did you rise out of bed like Mumra? What happened when
like
you got
Tyson Fury from his knockout?
Yeah, Tyson Fury. Yeah, did you rise from Tyson Fury? What did it look like? I would have loved to be. Was it a gradual coming to the realization that, you know what, I'm changing here, and I'm going to accept where I'm going?
Yeah.
Or was it literally as dramatic as waking up after having the heart surgery?
No.
What was it like?
Yeah, dude, my heart surgeries were 2012 and 2014. And then I capitulated up to the point between 2016 and 2019, I was an alcoholic with this machine on the heart transplant waiting list. Complete self-destruction. How I'm here today, Douglas, speaking to you, is a genuine miracle. But I crashed my car drunk 1st of September 2019, and a couple of months later I had an intervention whilst on a family holiday where my best friends from school, my dad and my half-brother sent me off to a rehab facility in Cape Town. Dude, that experience, those 28 days I spent in that rehab facility was the absolute, ground zero of where my life changed in a nutshell. Like, it was the most unbelievably painful process I've ever endured. But at the same time, it liberated me. It completely transformed the person that you see here today because it broke me down. All my belief systems, all those limiting beliefs, all of that just went bang, chopped me down in my prime. And it was that process then allowed me, like, through the process of vulnerability and sharing in that environment through the group and one-to-one therapy sessions, that greater understanding of why my thought process are like this, why do I feel like I do today, and then painting that picture, journaling, just made unbelievable amounts of just putting what was in here on paper and then reading it back to people.
Wow.
And that was a huge healing process. And at the end of that 28 days, it was just like something happened. I awoke. I woke up from this unconscious dream that I was been living, and I became a conscious being. And through that process then was just the most I can't highlight this enough. It was the most beautiful process. I woke up and everything changed, Douglas. The colors I could see, the smells, the taste of foods. My whole diet changed after this.
It was all heightened.
And I was so present, but it like almost hurt because I'd never felt this before. And then I had to come home and pick up the pieces because my life was an absolute dog show. So it was like, then it was facing the reality of the life that I had lived to that point, which was just in a mess. So it cost me my marriage, which was a wonderful lesson because through this process of consciousness and awakening, it allowed me then to see where I'd gone wrong. But I still had deeply ingrained behaviors that weren't acceptable. They weren't acceptable. And they were going to take time to get out. And that was just too much for my wife, my ex-wife. But her lesson in leaving me was a great lesson, Douglas, because what it taught me from that point on was I no longer had a victim mindset. I had now a growth mindset. I started to see things not as good or bad, but as lessons. And that allowed me to face the world from a completely different perception. I then started to see, like, why are these things, they're not happening to me, they're happening for me, bro. And then I started to feel my way through the world. And I knew, though, because I was so invigorated by that experience of healing in the house and being vulnerable and sharing my pain, that I was like, I'm going to do whatever the hell it takes, and I'm going to do the work that's required for me to heal myself in its entirety, but also be there for my children. Because that was my why. I knew straight away. My why is get going. And over time, my why has become me too, because I needed accountability for myself. And through that, then I was prepared to do anything. And I did, bro. I did the 12 steps of recovery with an amazing sponsor. I worked alongside that with a recovery and an addiction psychologist. After that, I did work with a guy, an NLP, a master NLP practitioner, which was incredible, I might add. I did EMDR, I can't remember what it's called, brain spotting. I did equine therapy, cold water therapy, and then eventually I stumbled across breath work. And dude, every single time I thought I was healed, like I had no idea, bro. It was just layers upon layers upon layers of my entire life of stored trauma and experience and unfortunate series of events that I had buried over a long time. It allowed me a healing process. Every time, just growth. Immense personal growth. But it was then, behind all of that was a healthy, regular routine, which allowed me to be where I am today. Getting up in the morning, doing my journaling, my gratitude list, just walking because of my health. I couldn't go beast myself, go to the gym. Just 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, sometimes an hour walk on the flat. But being in nature, bro, being around like-minded individuals, good individuals. Like, what do they say, Douglas? You are the sum of the 5 people you spend most of your time with.
You are so much more. MicDropClub.com. Make life boom.
Absolutely. And that's my 1 of 5 per day. Since we've had this conversation first thing this morning, I cannot echo what you said even more. Yeah. Again, just to paraphrase, the fact that you were writing down, offloading what was in your conscious, in your mind on paper is so beautiful. The fact that you describe what you woke up to as beautiful, these are not words that typically men will use, but I like the word beautiful. Yeah. My mum always told me the most beautiful name in the world is your own name. So love that name and find beauty in strange places. So if you can wake up in the morning and you find beauty in your surroundings, that's the excellent thing. But second, my best poem of all time was written by Marilyn Monroe. Of probably one of my early crushes as well. But she wrote "Think in Ink."
Right.
Think in ink. It's just very simple. And the fact that you write things down, special things happen. When you can write things down, you slow. It's like meditation on literally steroids. Forgiveness. I like the fact that you've forgiven yourself and you're going on this journey of self-discovery. Yeah. And what better voyage can you set sail on than a voyage where you are the vessel in the sea of life yourself, and then you're constantly adapting. There's a challenge here. I think we're going to pick up on another show. Because there's so much, it's so packed with information where you can go through the transformation. It's almost like Scrooge. It's coming up to Christmas, so we can talk about Scrooge. Yeah. Scrooge was visited by 3 ghosts, isn't it? He changed after seeing himself dead and his tombstone in the graveyard. He changed. But the perception people had of Scrooge had not changed. That in itself is another journey. Yes, where people are expecting you to be something that you are not, and they're bonded, and they've, like for yourself as a career professional athlete, you might have journalists that have made a living out of describing you a certain way, and then you say, no, I'm not like that anymore. I'm not like that. They too have to go through that grieving, loss process because they haven't learned to treat and adapt their life around wherever you're presenting. Yeah. So it's a big, big subject. The fact that you touched upon these various therapies and you're not afraid to talk about that, I think
it can be so lonely, Douglas.
Yeah.
It's a lonely process, bro. Because when you wake up, you realize, actually, I don't have anything in common with like 90% of the people I spent my time with. What do I have in common with them? Mostly alcohol, because those are the people I'd surrounded myself with to enable my behavior. But then it was the understanding that, like, I had rugby in common with a lot of my rugby friends, but I speak to a very small minority of the human beings that I spend time with pre my awakening. That is because that connection was built on an authentic self. So it was that deeper understanding that, now I long for community, Douglas, because in South Wales, I feel like there's not a tribe here for me. There is individuals dotted all over the place, but there's not a community of humans where I can go and feel like, oh, this is home. That's something I'm trying so hard to establish now.
Oh wow, Rhys, you're home. And talking to me, that's why I called you brother for the first time I met you, because we connected in what we're doing on social media, the posts we put out. We are becoming omnipresent. The second you press that post button, upload button, our ideas, our thoughts, our expression, they're put out there for the universe. And those who connect to that messages form our tribe, and we connect to their tribes as well. 100%. So physically we might not have that around us, but I can assure you, I on a daily basis, if I don't see a post from you, I'm thinking about you, what you're up to doing. If I do see a post and I'm feeling lazy, oh my God, Rhys has done something. I got to post something now. I don't know how, I don't know what to talk about. Lights, camera, no. Turn on the camera, just roll. And that's what it's about, I think, to help each other thrive in the environment that we're in. 100%. Tribalism is very, very important because, as you were talking about earlier, if you're in the wrong network and you're there with your not authentic self, you're doing damage. And even to the people in that group, you're doing damage to that group, because that group, there's nothing wrong with them if they're being their authentic self. They found their tribe. They're living the best. They're living their best life. Yeah. But if you are not living your best life and you are not being your authentic self, and you're in that group, there's a problem there.
Dude, and therein it lies the illusion, right? People think they're living their best lives.
Yeah.
But they're not even conscious. They don't even know what their best lives are.
Yeah.
So in that denial, where it lies the suffering. So
most definitely, there's a lot of philosophical lived experience, South African heritage, just get on with it, that I think we need to have another conversation, and I think this is a part of a series of conversations that we're going to be having over the month, because it's Mental Health Awareness Month in November. So this podcast was to set the scene for you to understand who the man is, who Rhys Thomas is, not who he was, but who he is. You guys take care. I'm going to put it to Rhys to just close show. Any closing remarks for our viewers?
Yeah, just, with Men's Mental Health Awareness Month coming up, like you said, Douglas, I just can't emphasize enough, for men and for people in general, it's just, it's okay to not be okay. I think we all just go through our lives in these habitual cycles of, expectation, and, we have so many things that we need in our lives that are so stressful. The society is so stressful right now. And competition, all these types of things, right? But we're so ego-based right now. It's okay. Just reach out, speak to another brother or sister, whatever it takes. Do you know what I mean? Because we can only run for so long, Douglas. And it's time for us to stand up. It's time for acceptance of the situation this society finds ourselves in, because we're sick, bro. And but we're here to help.
Absolutely. On that note, I can't supersede that. Rhys Thomas, you've been so great, and I'm looking forward to our series coming up from the Mic Drop Club. You guys stay safe, stay blessed, take care of yourselves and each other. We out. Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to
well
check
done,
out
well done. How was that?
Yeah, I like it.
The show notes and useful
that's
links.
good. I was
to the podcast.
That was more than what I was expecting, which is good. I think that's a solid entrance.
Oh,
and
God,
I think what we can